It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Finish Strong Friday, presented, of course, by DraftKings. And we have got the Professor Greg Cosell from NFL Films University is in the house. Cannot wait to get his thoughts on all these tight ends getting franchise tagged, the Russell Wilson trade, of course, and also, quite frankly, we're going to dive into the top running backs. He's got a guy, I know, we were texting that he really likes in this running back draft class. Greg will be the big show in about a minute. First, though, it's a Friday, which is not just a Finish Strong Friday. It's also a Winners Friday, Mike Singletary.
I want winners. I want people that want to win.
Yeah, we want you to win at life, okay? We want you to finish strong with the work day today, get a workout in, eat healthy, kick butt at work for your family so that this weekend you can feel good about yourself, feel good about what you did. You also can enter to win any of our contests and then have me announce you on a Thursday or Friday as a winner and know you got a little something coming to you, like Ryan Curella, who quote tweeted the College Draft Podcast this week at Ross Tucker Pod and said he's a huge Fran Duffy guy. Fran Duffy was on the College Draft talking about what goes on behind the scenes at the Combine. Very interesting. Highly encourage you guys to check it out if you didn't already. Fran is awesome. So Ryan, you get a signed press pass, signed football card, signed picture. You tell me, bro. Ross at rosstucker.com. The sponsor confirmation email winner, David King. Yet another guy getting a myfrontpagestory.com story for a loved one. Love it. Racking them up. Mother's Day will be here before you know it. Lots of birthdays and anniversaries. Myfrontpagestory.com. David, let me know what you would like. I love when you guys take advantage of that because the people you give the gift to, it is awesome. It's like the gift that keeps on giving, because they hang it somewhere in the house and it's up forever. And then the YouTube shout out, which is a cameo style shout out. So it's 30 seconds to a minute, and I'll shout out whoever you want me to shout out. It can be a gag. It can be congratulations. It can be whatever you want it to be. Brett Bolsinger, he talked about Steve Fezzik's thoughts on youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL on the Calvin Ridley bet. So kudos to you, Brett. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
As promised, we are now joined, as we are every week, by the NFL Films legend, the civilian GOAT, the one and only Greg Cosell, at Greg Cosell. I checked, by the way, our YouTube views, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, and Greg's video breakdowns of the prospects always do extremely well. We're diving into running backs today, but Greg, it's been such a busy week. I have to ask you about some of the veteran movement and just get your sort of first blush thoughts. And I guess the one I'm most curious about would be your thoughts on Russell Wilson's fit in Denver in general, and I guess in particular in Nathaniel Hackett's offense.
Well, when you make a trade like that, obviously you have internal discussions as to how he fits. You don't just make a trade. We know he's a good quarterback, but Nathaniel Hackett, Ross, comes in many ways from that highly structured, highly defined offensive school of thought, a little bit of Kyle Shanahan, where the run game is really the starting point and the pass game works off that. So it'll be very interesting. Obviously, when you trade for a quarterback like Russell Wilson, you have to have a plan in your mind that he feels comfortable with as well, or you wouldn't make the trade. So I'm very curious to see what the balance is there between what Hackett's background is. He's not an old coach, but he obviously grew up in the game. He's not old as far as coaching, with what his philosophy is and what he'd ideally like it to be versus what I think Russell Wilson would like to be himself, because my sense is that Russell Wilson would like to throw the ball more. In Seattle, obviously, that offense all through those years was essentially built on the run game. That is really where Paul Hackett's Paul Hackett. Wow, I'm aging myself here, Ross. Nathaniel Hackett's offense starts this with the run game. So this, as I said, you have to have these discussions before you make the trade. So I think the offense will look different.
It's interesting to hear you talk about, Nathaniel Hackett and highly structured because, one thing I've certainly learned from you over the years is that as good as Russell Wilson is, maybe it's his height, maybe it's something else. He hasn't always made the throws or made the plays within the structure of the offense.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind is in Seattle, from the moment he got there, and obviously he got there when they had the best defense in football and they had Marshawn Lynch. But for the most part, all through the years in Seattle, they use the run game as the foundational starting point. And there's no way to know the answer to this unless you're there. But did they do that because of a philosophy, a Pete Carroll philosophy, or did they do that because they believe that's the best way to play with Russell Wilson? We don't really know the answer to that. In some ways, Nathaniel Hackett and the Broncos had to decide what they believe the answer to that to be, because you don't make the trade without having a clear, defined plan as to what Russell Wilson is and how you plan to deploy him.
You also don't franchise tag a guy, Greg, unless you feel like they're a big part of what you're doing and really valuable, which is why it was stood out to me this year. Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, David Njoku, 3 guys getting the franchise tag, Greg, that I don't think anybody, 3 tight ends, I don't think anybody would say that they think any of those guys are top 5 tight ends in the NFL. And yet, because of the economics, they all get franchise tag.
Yeah.
Is there a lesson there, Greg? Is there a takeaway?
Well, it could just be this particular year, but tight ends in general, Ross, the game has changed to where tight ends, because now they detach from the formation. And by the way, Gesicki was a detached player a year ago, but keep in mind, Mike McDaniel is now the head coach in Miami. Gesicki is not George Kittle, but we obviously know that the tight end was very important in the San Francisco offense. So I'm sure Mike McDaniel has a plan for him in the Miami offense. And Njoku has always been a highly talented, very athletic player who's production has not necessarily matched his traits. Maybe there's going to be a slight change in philosophy in Cleveland in terms of how to use him, because he's clearly athletic. But the overall point is this: tight ends really can give coordinators and quarterbacks a much clearer pre-snap read depending on where you line them up. They're very important in today's NFL. Tight ends, for instance, that can line up as the boundary X, the single receiver to the short side of the field with 3 receivers to the wide side. That tells the quarterback a lot before the snap of the ball. That's what you're trying to do. So tight ends, particularly ones that can do that, they have a lot of value in today's NFL.
We don't talk money with you a lot because we just don't. That's not really your deal. I would argue, I think tight ends might be the most undervalued position in the NFL. I mean, I think that's why these guys are getting franchised. I mean, you can get a guy for $10 million for a year. The top guys are making 14, 15. Receivers, corners, D linemen are making, TJ Watt and Joey Bosa are making double that. Look, I think edge rushers are important, but tight ends, I mean, Travis Kelce, George Kittle. Ask the Chiefs and the Niners how valuable those guys are to what they're doing.
And the other reason, and I'm just guessing here, this is not a big tight end draft year, Ross. So there may be a feeling that, hey, we're not going to really get that guy in the draft, so we need to make sure we keep our guys.
Ooh, that's interesting. One position that is chronically discussed in terms of its value, it's running back. Let's dive into some of the running backs in this draft class, Greg. It's funny, in my mind, 3 guys have gotten a lot of attention, and then there's just kind of a bunch of other guys. Is there one guy, I ask this with every position group, but is there one guy that stood out above the rest to you that you really liked?
Well, there's a bunch I like, but I would say Breece Hall from Iowa State would be my number one if I had to make a list. He's the total package, and I think that ultimately he presents a high level combination of what I like to describe as patience and decisiveness. He's very smooth. He's fluid. There's a gliding feel to his running. He's a professional runner, Ross. He has a refined sense of pace and tempo. He rarely looks hurried. He almost runs with a rhythmic feel that at times it almost looks choreographed. And I thought in 2021, as opposed to 2020, because I watched both years, I thought that there was a more powerful feel to his running in 2021. I thought he dropped his pads. I thought he took on defenders at the second and third level. He's got a strong lower half. But I really like Breece Hall. To me, he's the total package of the running backs in this class because I think he's a receiver as well. And I think there's a lot to be tapped there when you get to the NFL. He'll run a more multiple route tree from out of the backfield. He'll run angle routes. He'll run wheel routes, maybe H-seam. He has shown he can be detached from the formation. So Hall is to me, the number one back in this class.
Just a guess here, Greg, but I'm going to guess last summer you did not watch Kenneth Walker Wake Forest tape. That's a guess. I'm going to guess you did not watch any tape of Kenneth Walker at Wake Forest. He wasn't even on the radar as a prospect. Goes to Michigan State, has an absolutely ridiculous year. What do you see from the kid at Michigan State? Which, by the way, I'll just one note on this, Greg. I don't know how much you've ever watched Wake Forest offense, but they have a truly unique offense that I've never seen anybody else run anywhere, that the running back essentially has to like hop in place for like 4 seconds before he gets the ball sometime. It's very unique and strange, and it almost feels like he just needed to get to a different place that more suited his style.
Well, yeah, I'm not that familiar with their offense, and you'd be correct. I did not watch Kenneth Walker a year ago, but I did watch quite a bit of him this year at Michigan State. He was a fun guy to watch. He's compact. He's built low to the ground. He's got piston-like feet that seemingly never stop moving. He's got really good lateral quickness and suddenness. He makes decisive, sharp cuts. He's got really good contact balance to work through the first and second levels of the defense. He's tenacious. He's competitive. He lowers his pads. He attacks defenders. There's a run to daylight feel to him, Ross. He looks for space. So with a sort of slashing, darting style, and he can outflank the defense with his speed. I think his game is primarily built on lateral quickness and suddenness and contact balance and competitiveness. And there's a little bit of, jazz musician to him as well. He's kind of free-flowing. He looks, as I said, for space. So there's an improvisational, creative element to him. So I liked Kenneth Walker's tape. The question is his value in the pass game, and I think that's an open question.
Which doesn't mean he can't do it. No. It just means he hasn't shown really that
Correct.
He can do it.
Correct. And that's what teams find out with pro days and other things that I don't get to do. So you are correct. I'm not going to sit here and say he cannot do it. It just wasn't on his tape.
So I think a year ago, they were talking like Isiah Spiller was a surefire first-round pick, that he might have been the best running back last year, if I remember. And this year, I don't know if he didn't have as good a year or what. I didn't follow him that closely. What do you think of Spiller from A&M?
Yeah, I like the way he runs. The pass game stuff is a concern with him, including pass protection. But he'll come into the NFL as a competitive, physical downhill runner. He's got size. He's got natural power. He's got finishing traits. He comes across, when you watch his tape, as kind of that foundation volume back with that kind of profile. Although he didn't carry 200 times in any season at Texas A&M, but that's what his profile is. He has size. He has a compact build. He's got patience, vision. He's got short area burst. He's got subtle lateral quickness, works really well in confined space. He's got natural power, good contact balance. He's got finishing toughness and competitiveness. He's got the traits of a sustaining NFL back. I think that, he's going to be one of those guys that people say, well, the NFL, you don't draft backs high because he's that kind of back. He's a grinder in some ways. So we'll see where he goes in the draft, but he's got strong sustaining traits as a runner.
Any other guys really jump out to you, Greg? If I give you kind of a blank, I mean, there's a lot of other names here. Algier and Zamir White, Kenny Brooks, James Cook, Brian Robinson. Any other guys that really stood out to you?
Yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, I really like Brian Robinson's tape. I think he's a really interesting back. He's got feature back size and traits. He's close to 6'2". He's 226 pounds, give or take. There's kind of a looseness to his running style. He's got light, active feet. I wouldn't say he's purely shifty and elusive, but there were a lot of runs in which he flashed lateral quickness and agility with sort of stop and start and the ability to reaccelerate. I thought his 2021 tape showed kind of a loose-hipped runner, more efficient change of direction, more fluid feel. I like Brian Robinson. But when you talk about the draft and the NFL, and that's what we're doing, we're transitioning guys to the NFL. And by the way, there's some other backs I like. There's Jerome Ford from Cincinnati, who I think is a really intriguing back, who initially went to Alabama and transferred to Cincinnati. But the pass game has become really important, as we all know, Ross, in the NFL. And I think there's two backs that really stood out to me when it comes to that I've seen. I may be missing some. I haven't seen every single back, obviously. But I thought James Cook from Georgia, who's Dalvin Cook's little brother, and he's smaller than Dalvin Cook. He won't be a foundation back in the NFL at 190 pounds, but he's a really good runner, and he's a really good receiver. You can line him up outside. You can split him, detach him from the formation. So he's fascinating. By the way, he does possess all the skills to be a really good runner. He's just small. He's not the same level of player as Alvin Kamara, but in many ways, he brings a similar running receiving profile to an offense. And then there's Rachaad White from Arizona State, who's a bigger man and a good runner and another very, very good receiver. So in today's NFL, you and I know the value of receiving backs, particularly backs that can split and detach from the formation. James Cook can do that. White can do that. It would not surprise me if White from ASU becomes an excellent NFL player with his strong combination of running and receiving traits.
Yeah, I don't think there's any that's interesting that those guys jumped out to you from that standpoint in the receiving game, which I think with every passing year, Greg, the value they place on that goes up and the value of just, what they are as a regular down and distance runner goes down.
Yeah, and that's why there are backs that I liked. Like, I thought that there was a back from Ole Miss who did not get a lot of volume at Ole Miss named Snoop Connor, who I really liked his running. I just don't know how the league will see him. I mean, I thought that there was some Chris Carson to Connor's running style. Carson being a little more physical and powerful, and Snoop Connor being more quicker and more naturally explosive. And I think he is a guy just scratching the surface of what he could become as a runner. But then you get into the issue of, can he be a factor in the pass game? And if not, we know those guys don't have the same value in today's NFL unless they're truly special. And even then, it depends on other factors. Look, we look at someone like Saquon Barkley, and unfortunately he's been injured a lot, but it just has never worked out.
Check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. That way you always know what Greg is up to. You can also go back, whether it's just the audio version or youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, and check out Greg discussing quarterbacks and wide receivers the last couple of weeks. We will move on. Greg and I will huddle up. Maybe it's tight end. Maybe it's offensive lineman. We'll figure it out next week. But the positional breakdown continues heading into the 2022 NFL Draft. Greg, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it.
I'm telling you, this guy, Greg Cosell, is a keeper. You know what else is a keeper? Your hair. Trust me. I am one of you, okay? I didn't know when I would start to losing my hair or not. I didn't know if I should start doing something. The answer is yes and yes. When in doubt, there is no doubt. 2 out of 3 men will experience some form of hair loss by the time they're 35. More than 50 million men suffer from male pattern baldness. You don't have to, though. There's 2 FDA-approved medications that can prevent hair loss. Keeps offers both. I take both. I'm not ashamed at all. I'm on TV. I want to keep my hair as much as I can. Why not? I take a little pill in the morning, and in the morning and at night, I put a topical cream on my bald spot in the back of my head. It has proven results. That's why the FDA approved it. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Ross to receive your first month of treatment for free. That's KEEPS.com/Ross to get your first month free. Keeps.com/Ross.
Tuck's Takes.
Hey, Ross. Good morning. Let's start today with the Washington Commanders, and that is still a little odd to say, but we'll start with them. They trade a third-round pick and a conditional second-round pick to the Indianapolis Colts, and they get to pay Carson Wentz $28 million this year.
I don't know if I'll ever get used to it, Bri. I probably will, because I suppose I sort of got used to Washington football team over the last couple years. I really do not care for the Commander name. Man, it just feels like Warthogs or Red Hogs would have been so much better. It bothers me as a guy that played there twice, started my career there and finished my career there. This trade would also bother me quite a bit if I was a fan of the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders now. You're going to trade a third-round pick and a conditional second. And oh, by the way, yeah, the Colts flipped Washington to 7th. Who cares? And the Colts even move up 5 spots in the second round this year. To pay Carson Wentz $28 million, the Colts were getting rid of Carson Wentz. Regardless, if nobody was willing to trade anything, they would have cut him outright. Were there other teams that wanted to pay Carson Wentz $28 million this year? Were there other teams willing to give up draft picks to do that? I tend to doubt it, quite frankly. I tend to doubt it. I think Washington panicked. I mean, think about this, and I tweeted this, at Ross Tucker NFL. Frank Reich loves Carson Wentz. Loves him. Personally, professionally. If Frank Reich was willing to allow this to happen, even though the Colts don't have a quarterback. The Colts don't have a quarterback. What does that tell you if you're Washington? Don't like the trade at all? It's yet another team, I guess, that thinks they can get the most out of Carson. We shall see. But what are the odds he's better in Washington than he was in Indy with Frank Reich?
Tuck's Takes.
Edge rusher Khalil Mack traded from the Bears to the Chargers in return for a second-round pick and a 6th in 2023.
This makes a lot of sense to me for both teams. The Bears are not a player or two away. They're not. And with Aaron Rodgers back in Green Bay, they're not winning that division. It's not happening. Okay? So they're trying to get, I believe, more weaponry for Justin Fields, whether that's offensive line, tight end, receivers, whatever. I think they'd rather use the Khalil Mack money on offense to help prop up Justin Fields and see what this kid can do than on defense. The second-round pick this year helps. They free up a lot of cap space. You know, Mack was hurt last year. There's some debate as to how much he has left. Clearly, the Chargers think he's got quite a bit left. They know they have Justin Herbert on a rookie contract for 3 more years if they want to. They're trying to take advantage of it. This trade is the way trades are supposed to be. Trades started like thousands of years ago. Hey, I got a grain farm. Sweet. I got a milk farm. Awesome. I'll give you some grain. You give me some milk. Sounds like a deal. not all trades, there's a winner or a loser. It's bartering. I think both sides got what they wanted here.
Tuck's Takes.
A couple guys getting cut, including the Cardinals, cutting linebacker Jordan Hicks. Titans, left guard Roger Saffold. Commanders also cut Landon Collins.
So not all of these are official yet. Some of these are going to happen at the start of the new league year, but it's leaked now so that people know these guys are available. A lot of linebackers. I mean, Hicks adds to Bobby Wagner and A.J. Klein, and a lot of off-the-ball linebackers getting cut. Saffold's been a really good player. That's not good for the Titans to be weakening their offensive line. Landon Collins is interesting. He said publicly he took a pay cut, and then when they got Carson Wentz, they asked him to take another pay cut. And he's like, no, I took one. I'm not taking another one. So that's a good way for Carson Wentz to ingratiate himself with the new team. You're making other guys take pay cuts and get cut. That's setting him up for success.
Tuck's Takes.
Alejandro Villanueva has retired, and another guy cut, Tavon Young, cut by the Ravens.
Tavon Young's a really good nickelback. He's just gotten hurt too much, and they can save the salary cap space. Villanueva didn't have a great year, served his purpose as the Ravens had injuries at offensive tackle. They needed him. I think he started like every game. He only played 7 years only, and that's how long I played. But I think he started, Bri, every game just about for those 7 years, because it's pretty remarkable, actually, how many games. I mean, it feels like he played a lot longer than that, doesn't it? Because he was starting for so long for the Steelers and other people. Obviously now the Ravens, I mean, he started 107 games. You look at it, 2015 started 10. Then he started every game after that. Crazy durable. Awesome. Terrific career for Alejandro.
Tuck's Takes.
And one last note, Jason Kelsey is going to be back for another season with the Eagles.
He had an epic video, absolutely epic video, talking about him coming back. Speaking of epic, by the way, do you know you can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 770 million people? Then you add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Look, you can't just find a starting center like Jason Kelsey anywhere. And you probably can't find them on LinkedIn. You know what, though? You can find them anywhere else. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Ross. That's linkedin.com/Ross to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Maybe you should go on LinkedIn and do a video like Jason Kelsey did where he's drinking a beer. I mean, what an epic video from that guy. You got to look, if you're on LinkedIn, you got to do something different. You got to do something like that, something that stands out. I love it. I also love our patrons. Patreon.com/RT Media. Pizza Boy Brewing. I might be there tomorrow. Sporticulture. HumanHeadNYC.com. And SteakhouseSports.com. Absolutely love all of them. Love everybody that signs up at Patreon.com/RT Media to be a part of our private Slack channel. If you need some podcasts the next couple of days, Fantasy Feast, Even Money, College Draft, Andrew Brandt's Business of Sports. We will be back either Sunday night or Monday morning. Not sure yet. I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough, and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.